Hi everybody, this is Tina. Welcome to my video today, you guys. I have a really fun project for you guys and we're going to get really messy. My desk is a mess. I have tons of different things laid out here and we're just gonna have some fun. My fingers are all inky and we're just gonna dive in. We're gonna be using two different stamp sets today. We're gonna be using this one. This is Vintage Leaves. Both of these stamp sets are in our annual catalog. And sometimes I forget about our annual catalog. Once our smaller catalogs go live, our holiday and our occasions catalog, I tend to forget to look back and see what our annual catalog had. So these are both in our annual catalog. This is one of my favorites. It's Vintage Leaves. I just used a leaf stamp on my paper pumpkin. So you could use that if you don't have this stamp set, but you have your paper pumpkin, you could use the leaf in that. There was a couple leaves and they looked a little bit similar, so you could do that. And then this one right here, we're just going to be using a sentiment off of this one. But if you have this one, what we're going to do, the technique and how we're going to put everything together, you could totally use the paisleys on this one. So let's dive in. I'm going to be using this designer paper. And we're not making a card today, but you totally could use what we're gonna do and make a card. What I wanna do is, I have this jar, has some M&Ms in here. This is a tiny canning jar. This is the 12-ounce jar. So in our house, we drink out of mason jars. So I have a big 18-ounce mason jar that I drink out of, and then my kids all drink out of this size. And we have lids that have holes in them and they have the straw. And so I have a ton of these on hand. And I'm always buying mason jars. I love them. So I went ahead and I picked up a flat of these because I thought we needed a couple more for our kids. We needed to have a couple more. And then I thought these would make such cute gifts if I could do something with them. So right now there's just some M&Ms, and this is some fall M&Ms, so they're really pretty fall colors. And then the other thing I have is this takeout box. Now this is a craft takeout box, and it was from Stampin' Up! A couple years ago. And you guys know that anytime we have anything that's like pretty packaging, I always hoard it. So I'll buy a bunch of it when it's in our catalogs, and then certainly if it goes on the clearance rack, I always buy a bunch more. So we don't have this available, but over on my website, I have linked some places where I found some takeout boxes that if you really love the idea and how I do things and you wanted some takeout boxes, there's some options for you to be able to pick some up over there, both in craft and white. So we're going to decorate both of these, and we're going to use this designer paper. This is the Painted Autumn designer paper. So let's do our stamping and all of our inking first because it's kind of a mess. So right here, I just have this lid. It's actually just a lid that goes to one of my containers that is somewhere. I don't even know where the bottom part is. I've just held on to this. So it's just a slick surface. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some inks. I've picked some inks. I have Wild Wasabi. I'm sorry, is that right? Yeah, Wild Wasabi. I have, this is Pumpkin Pie, Soft Sky, Cajun Craze, Crushed Curry. These are all colors that are in the designer paper, okay? So you can do a couple different things. You can smush some of this down on here. What I found is that you want to start with the lighter colors first, so you're not getting darker colors in your lighter colors. And it's a little bit hard to see. I know it's having a little bit of problem, and I just kind of do it on the side. That way if I mix any of my inks, it ends up being okay. But we're also going to use some re-inkers. But when you use re-inkers and you do the dots of ink, it is a little bit different. The way the ink kind of ends up being on the way everything mixes. Oops, and I just dropped that right down there. See, that's why if it's a lighter one, it might be a problem. So then I just have all of these inks, and I'm kind of just mixing them. This Cajun Craze is going to be the darkest. So we're probably going to be a little bit more careful with that. So you see how that ink is getting down? This is just a spritzer. And it had a little bit of blue, like soft sky in it, and I just didn't rinse it out. So what I did is I added some Perfect Pearls and water to this spritzer, and it kind of gave it a blue tint, but then you can see that it is mixed and it has this pearlescent. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to spritz this all over. So that's pretty good. There's still a couple dots. This is kind of what I want to avoid. Just dots of ink everywhere. And then I don't want to mix it too much because I don't want it to get muddled. Like right in here, it's kind of getting a little bit kind of brownish, and I don't want that. I'm just going to take my... Each of this is going to come out different. Every time you do it, it's going to come out different, okay? So now what you're going to need is some watercolor paper. It's important to have the watercolor paper because I'm going to put a lot of water on here. So now I have the leaves. So I just have them on blocks, okay? And then what I'm going to do is we're going to dip our stamp into that water, and we're going to bring it back over and bring it down onto our paper. So I'm holding this here for a minute as it kind of soaks into the paper, and then I'm lifting it. Okay, and then if you need to grab a paper towel, this is really pretty. It's not necessarily a horrible color, like even though it's kind of getting a little bit brownish. It has that really pretty, almost like a copper look to it. So let's do a couple other ones. So here's a larger leaf. So what I like to do is put it down in the ink in one spot, pick it up, and bring it over into another spot. And then bring it down to your paper again and hold it there for a minute while it soaks into the paper and the colors get down in different places, and then lift it up. Now you can bring this over and let it kind of run, and then you can let that dry on its own. So here's a couple that I've already cut out. So what you're going to find is the less amount of water you pick up, the less amount of color you pick up, the more the lines within the stamp are going to show. The more water you have, the more watercolored it's going to look. Like that's a perfect example right here. I didn't have a lot of wetness or a lot of ink or water on that stamp, so more of the lines came out, to where this one I had a lot of the water and a lot of the ink, and so a lot of the leaf is colored in with that watercolor. So the next thing we're going to do, so we have this one whole sheet, and I'm going to cut this out with my framelits. So this stamp set has a set of framelits that go with it. So I'll just take these over to my Big Shot and we'll cut these out. But I have also cut out, to do this second technique, I'm just going to clean out that tin, and then I'm going to put all new colors in there and mix them, and then we're going to do the very next technique. That way the colors are just a little bit more clean, and I'm doing the same process, adding some ink, spritzing some water over it, and then we'll get started doing a couple more leaves. We're going to take some leaves that I've already cut. So these are just die cut into watercolor paper, okay? And we're just going to dip it in here. I've cleaned up my area and I have all my leaves here, and this is definitely a technique that gets messy. So I suggest when you're doing your leaves, you just do a whole bunch of them at once and get all of that out of the way. I have way more here than I'll probably use, but that's okay because I can save them for another project. This is probably my favorite one. These definitely have some shimmer on them and some shine from that Perfect Pearls. You can see that there's just very different looks. This was just from putting it right in the ink and doing that, and then this was from stamping. So putting that stamp into the water in the ink and then stamping on it. These are pretty sturdy because they're water paper, so there's some curl to them, and that's okay because that's going to add to the look. So I actually really love the way this one came out. It's just very faint, and the detail's really pretty. There's more white here than there is color, but I love this, and this was like one of my first tries, and this was actually with the baby wipe technique, and I just felt like it wasn't getting enough color, but then as I've done them, I keep coming back to this one and thinking it's so beautiful. So I just have a variety of leaves here in the different ways that I did it. So we're just gonna put this pile of leaves over here, and then let me show you the other things that I've done. So I stamped 2 of these. I grabbed my circle stitched framelits and I stamped the Thankful, Grateful, Blessed, and then from that, this stamp set right here, there were a couple little tiny leaves right there. I took those and I stamped in blue and green, and I wanted to bring out some of the blue and the green that didn't necessarily come through in the leaves. And then I just took a gold Sharpie and I added a couple dots. So I did 3 sets, so where I stamped in 3, and then I did 3 clusters. And I did that on 2 tags. So you can see that they came out a little bit different. This is stamped in pumpkin pie. And then now we're going to put all of these things together. So we're going to put together both treats. So what I did is, this is the first one we can do. And this is just the jar of candy. And this is, it's definitely round. So it's going to be a little bit different when you put this together. So what I've done is I've just picked some designer paper that I think will layer together really nice. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out by just adding some tape. This is a really simple project. It doesn't have to be perfect. You could give this to somebody, you know, you could give it to someone at the bank or somebody at the kids' school, in the office. I was thinking that I might do this, give this to the principal. And it'll be just something fun that they set on their desk, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Nobody's really going to care exactly if everything lines up perfect. It's just this really pretty thing that you're giving. Exactly perfectly straight around that. And in fact, I kind of like the way that looks where it's layered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to layer the next piece like this. Okay, so now we have this part of the jar and we have our paper around it. So let's do our next step. So what I did is I took some of this blue baker's twine. I wrapped it around several times and I tied a bow. And again, I kind of layered it right over where there's like a little bit of imperfection, and I'm even turning up kind of the corners of that paper sticking out and kind of highlighting that it overlaps a little bit strange, right? So then for the very top, we're going to take our circle. So what we want to do is just add a little bit of foam tape or dimensionals, just something that's going to pop that up a little bit, just like that. Now I have a little cluster of my leaves. Now you could either stick them right here. Now I used some linen thread to tie those together. You could stick them right up under the baker's twine. It could sit, it's a little bit long. If you had a longer mason jar, a taller one, it might look a little bit better. But what I thought would be pretty is if we just even tucked it under here, like this, where it was tucked under, like this, where it was tucked under here. They're going to be able to see it. They might have to move it, but if we do like maybe just a glue dot right here, they're going to be able to see that. Or even putting it just like this, where you covered up maybe like where it was, let's do that. I hadn't thought exactly where I would put it, but I think a glue dot, a couple glue dots right here on this linen thread. and then just attach it to the lid. And then when they twist the lid off, that leaf is gonna move, okay? So we'll put it just like that. So the bow, and your bow is gonna be able to move. So your baker's twine bow, because you've just wrapped that around there. So let's have the bow sticking out a tiny bit. And then the top of it is like that, and you have your leaves. So it's this really cute, and it just has some little fall candy in it. So now let's go ahead and do our treat box here. You would fill your box with treats, and then I just eyeballed this paper. So you guys, I didn't even measure. When you're covering a box like this, it's not so important that everything is exactly precise. This is a larger box. I would prefer to do a little bit of a belly band, and then that way they didn't have to tear the paper. They could just slide the paper off to get the goodies inside. A fun candle would be nice in here. There's lots of different things that you could put in these kinds of boxes. And again, I'm just wrapping it around. If you wanted to attach a couple pieces of paper and make a belly band so that they could slide it off, that would be great. And then I have some of this retired ribbon. This is just pumpkin pie. I tend to keep ribbon on hand that retires if we still have the color. So like with this ribbon, it was from last year. But we have pumpkin pie, so we still have that color. So now what I want to do is layer this up here, and we'll tie a knot and a bow. Okay, so the last thing that I'm gonna do, I didn't have a big plan going into this. I just kind of knew I wanted to decorate these items. So when I got this, the box was definitely easier to figure out how to make everything work and fit. So I'm just gonna take a piece of foam tape. I showed you guys how I did that cluster of leaves where I just tied the little stems together, and then I can just fan them out. And then what I'm going to do is tuck the stems and that bow kind of underneath the orange set of bows and on top of the blue baker's twine that's wrapped around. So it kind of, this baker's twine, because I have two different sets of bows on there, that's okay. It just means that it is going to give it more layers. So because these leaves have texture to them and they're watercolored, you might have to put a couple glue dots underneath to keep them from curling. Like, you want them to curl up some, but you also want them to be a little bit flat. So then I was going to attach this to the baker's twine somehow, and that did not end up working either. Like, it just wasn't going to tie on there properly. So what I'm going to do is just tuck this up underneath the bows, and then we'll put another piece of foam tape right under there. So this is definitely going to be something, if I was giving this, this one I'm not giving because I don't have anything in it. And in order to put something in it, I would really have to tear it apart. But if you had something in here and you were giving this, this would be definitely something that they would tear apart, and then it would, you know, they would probably end up just throwing it away. But definitely the jar, you're going to be able to twist open and continue to use. So I know this was a little bit longer video, you guys, than I normally do. It had this special leaf technique in it, and I just kind of had fun using the ink and kind of getting messy. So it was a little bit longer of a video, but hopefully you enjoyed seeing these two items. These would make great gifts, a little bit of creative packaging, and I'll be back tomorrow with a Project Life update for you guys. I'm hoping to get that done today so that you guys can see where I'm at with Project Life tomorrow. I hope you're having a great day, and I will talk to you later.